Margaret, you were in Kyiv when that invasion started. Briar, you were initially reporting from Russia. You've been into Ukraine many times. I'd like to start with you because Ukraine's on the defensive now. Why is Russia in a stronger position than many had predicted?
Well, Adrienne, we know that Ukraine is struggling in part because Russia has ramped up its military production. Its economy is on war footing. It has factories working 24/7, churning out weaponry and ammunition. Experts say that Russia's producing about 100 tanks a month. Now, most of those are older tanks that are being pulled out of storage and refurbished, but regardless, they're ending up on the front line. And then, of course, you have its allies like North Korea and Iran, which have shipped Russia weapons, including missiles. Now, in terms of the supply of soldiers headed to the front, Russia really never ended its mobilization campaign, but it did say that more than 400,000 soldiers willingly signed up last year. And a big reason for this would be that Russia has raised the salary that soldiers earn. So it is now the equivalent of about 2,800 Canadian, which is more than twice what the average Russian salary is.
That's interesting. Listening to you talk about the ammunition, Margaret, we know that ammunition has been such a huge problem in Ukraine and that they've been rationing what it is they use. What is the status of ammo there?
Last spring, the ratio of artillery ammunition that Russia was firing against Ukraine was 2-1. In January of this year, it was 10-1 in Russia's favor. So it gives you an idea of just how dramatically things have changed, why Ukraine's counteroffensive has stalled, and it's why you see Ukrainian troops along the front line in eastern Ukraine digging down even deeper into defensive positions. They are trying to increase their own domestic production of ammunition. That's something that takes years, and of course, it could become targeted by the Russians as well. So that leaves them really relying on the Americans, the Europeans, their allies to dip into their stocks and get them that ammunition faster. They can't move forward without it. But there's real worry in Ukraine that solidarity with Ukraine is starting to fade amongst its allies.
So what you're talking about there is a need for the West to offer more in terms of ammunition, but there's the counter side of this argument, Briar, which is that what can the West do about Russia? You know, sanctions aren't making enough of an impact. What other steps could Western countries consider?
Yeah, that's right, Adrienne. Experts say that sanctions are really a blunt instrument and they would take years to take effect. So there's a lot of discussions going on about what more can be done. And one of the ideas that has been talked about a lot recently is seizing the roughly $300 billion in assets, Russian central bank assets, that have been frozen since the start of the war. Now, the argument among some is that this money should be taken and used to support Ukraine. But there is a lot of disagreement around this, particularly in Europe, where most of that money is held. Some worry that it's not really legal or that it would undermine the entire international financial system. Another area that's being talked about is laying secondary sanctions, going after companies or countries that are helping Russia circumvent the restrictions that are already in place. We know that Russia is managing as it is because it is an oil producer and energy prices are relatively high, and it has reliable trading partners like India and China. The EU introduced a sanction package today, and there were 3 Chinese companies that were on that list. And we know that the U.S. plans to unveil what it's calling a major sanction package this Friday.
Margaret, one last thought to you. Can you give us a sense of what troop morale is like in Ukraine? I mean, you've got a population 1/3 the size of Russia. You also hear, snippets of conversations from people like the mayor of Kyiv saying, Zelensky might not be up to the job anymore. What's the mood like there?
It's low, and you were talking about the loss of Divka just this past weekend. That really has taken people even lower. But, last December, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was talking about the manpower problem. And you do hear that from soldiers in interviews in the trenches saying, direct messages, boys, come and help us fight. In December, he put this on his generals, basically saying that they wanted a mobilization of about 400,000 1,000 people. It's clear they have a manpower problem. We're hearing reports about, them going to gyms and shopping malls and things like that. So that's certainly weighing on people's minds. In terms of Zelensky's popularity, he was accused of becoming more autocratic, but you have to remember that his support levels are still very high despite that criticism. It's not unusual to see criticism 2 years into war, but about 70% of the population are still giving him approval ratings. And the other thing to remember there is that Russia's going to be looking for those cracks, trying to find a way in them. They are already running disinformation campaigns against Zelensky.
As they have done for a long time. All right, Margaret and Briar, thank you both so much.